Hey guys, welcome back. It's Missy, and today we're going to talk about a quick tip to help you when you're having really bad anxiety. So to understand a little bit more about anxiety is very future-based. When you think about your past, you're not like, I'm so scared that I'm going to get an F, because you already experienced that situation. You're not scared of your past. You don't have anxiety about your regrets. You have anxiety about your future, what's to come, uncertainty. Uncertainty is the biggest trigger for anxiety. Or also you're afraid of it happening again. You remember that feeling, and so you have fears of experiencing that pain, that traumatic experience again. But again, it's still that uncertainty. You have a fear of not knowing, is it going to happen again? I remember how it feels. I'm afraid of it. There's that uncertainty. So when there is uncertainty, your brain goes wild, your imagination goes wild. You think of the worst case scenario, you think of your biggest fears, and it's so stressful. And then that's when your body will react off of your mind, and you will have all of those symptoms. So it's a cycle. Or sometimes, like if you have panic attacks, you'll get a symptom and then your mind will start racing, which is usually suppressed thoughts that are, just coming to light. So I have a whole video going more in depth about anxiety and things you can do if you have generalized anxiety. But today's video is a behavioral technique you can do if you're having obsessive or repetitive anxiety about a certain thing. First thing, as always, you need to recognize. You need to recognize when you are having anxiety, when you're having those symptoms, when you're having anxious-based thoughts. This can be hard because some people, they feel uncomfortable and they don't realize that it's anxiety, and they don't realize the thoughts they're having or the thing that just happened to trigger them. The thoughts in our head are the biggest contributor to our anxiety. So ask yourself questions about what's going on. What's the fear that you're having? What is making you anxious? You need to get more in depth with yourself. Ask those questions. Be curious. Ask yourself different questions to get to the root of what's going on. And you need to recognize the thoughts and the feeling of being anxious. The symptoms you're having, and what are the thoughts? What are the things you're telling yourself? So when you're having anxiety, I want you to get a notebook. Get some sort of journal, get some sort of notebook. And then write down your worst fear, worst case scenario. What are you terrified of happening? Write it down. That way, at that point, you can get it from out of your head onto paper. Because when you just leave things in your head, it just scrambles around and your imagination goes wild. So get it out. Get that out of your head. Then what you want to do is you want to write down the likelihood of that thing happening. For instance, let's say you're terrified of car accidents. You could look up the statistics to see how likely you are to get into a car accident. Or let's say when you go into a social interaction, you have fears that everyone's gonna point and laugh at you. You can go back and think, how often does that actually happen? Or you can think, how does worrying about my situation help me? Come up with questions you can ask yourself that will challenge the thoughts that you're having, so you can see the reality of your situation. When you see the chance of something happening or not happening, it helps you from your emotional part of your brain, that fear-based part of your brain, from reacting to going to more of that cognitive part of your brain, for your logic to start kicking in, for you to see in front of you, oh, this is a likelihood, oh, it's low. Then what you want to do is you want to challenge it. You want to detach from it. You want to change the story you tell yourself. So rather than telling yourself, I'm getting in a car accident, this is going to happen, I'm going to go to the hospital, I'm going to lose my legs, whatever the worst fear is, I'm going to lose my life, I'm going to lose a loved one, whatever it is. Catch yourself when you're telling that story. Reverse it, go back, and think about how many times you've gotten in the car and you did not get in an accident. Maybe you've gotten into maybe a few accidents, but it's not majority of the time you get in a car, right? Or let's say you have really bad anxiety about an interaction you're going to have with someone. You can ask yourself, well, what proof do I have that this person is going to react in a negative way? And also you can change the story that you're telling yourself about that interaction, rather than feeding that story that it's gonna go this certain way, where maybe they're gonna yell at you, it's gonna be negative, you're never gonna be friends again. Think about the way that it could go, how it could go right, or how you could handle it a certain way. Think about it in a more open-minded way. there are many different ways it could actually go. It could go negative, but there's also a possibility that it could go positive or better than expected, depending on how you handle the situation. So always look for ways that you can change the story you're telling yourself. Rather than telling yourself it's going to go to the worst case scenario, think of different ways it could go. Or change your perspective about how you see the situation. Rather than seeing it from a perspective of it's going to go downhill, see it as this is a stepping stone for me to learn how to interact with this person, or it's a stepping stone into growing our relationship, or it's a stepping stone in seeing if they're a healthy person for me. You're changing what you're telling yourself, so it's not so scary. You always want to think about what's in your control. So remember, with other people, you can't control how they react to things. You can control yourself and your own emotions. When certain things happen, you can't control them happening, but you can control yourself, how you react to it, how you respond. So you always want to think of the sense of what's in my control. So you always feel empowered rather than helpless, rather than focus on the things out of your control, like accidents, like interactions with people, like getting a job, things like that, school, whatever it is. Rather than thinking about those things that are out of your control, think about what's in your control. That's a way that you can change the story you tell yourself and feel empowered rather than helpless. So then at the end of all of that, what you want to do is you want to tell yourself, this is just an insecurity. This is a fear. This is something that my mind has created. It doesn't mean it's actually happening. That way you can disassociate from that insecurity and that fear, and you can associate with the new story you tell yourself. Now, I understand sometimes people's worst fears do happen, like losing someone, they lose their health, they maybe go blind, whatever it is, like terrible things do happen, and sometimes those are people's worst fears. So let's talk about something you can do about that. Something that I talk about a lot is visualizations. And so let's say it really is that bad. Let's say, because I know some anxious people will be like, you don't get it, like it's really that bad, like something really bad's gonna happen. For instance, there are some horrible cases where like when you suffer with cancer, it's really scary. And like there is a possibility of losing your life. So it's really scary. So of course you can change the story and tell yourself you're gonna survive and you're gonna do well and the chemo's gonna work. That's something you could tell yourself. But also you could visualize how you will handle those scary situations, like being scared of maybe surgery or things like that. You can visualize yourself being empowered and like you're getting through that thing. So you imagine the worst case scenario and visualize how you'll get through that. So you'll feel like you already experienced that thing and you already overcame it, and you have comfort in knowing you can take it on. But going back to what I said earlier, the reason why you writing your worst fears and then seeing the likelihood and also changing the story, the reason why that works is because you're using logic to counteract those fears, as well as you are changing the way your mind perceives these fears. So rather than seeing them as terrifying and causing your fight or flight to kick in, it sees them as not as scary and sees them as something that you can handle. And also you're challenging the worst case scenario that you have created in your mind, and really seeing the chances of it actually happening. So you're going from being irrational and having an extreme fear to being more rational, logical, and level-headed. So what you want to do when it comes to anxiety, one quick tip that can help you is write down worst case scenario, write down the likelihood, and then write down the story you tell yourself. Write down how you challenge it, write down a different story. And then at the end, remind yourself, this is just an insecurity. And remember, focus on what you can control. You can't control outside influences, or you can't control the thoughts that come, but you can control what you entertain. You can control what you react to. So you want to visualize the way that you can handle something and feel empowered rather than entertaining that helpless thought. And it's all about practice, but eventually you will see those things as less threatening, or your brain will then feel comfortable with using more logic for your fears, and you're changing the way you're responding to those fears. So what do you guys think? Leave it all in the comments below. Do you struggle with anxiety? What do you do about it? Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share with someone that you think may need it. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye guys. A quick tip about, you could look up the statistics of, what's the word I'm looking at? Statistics. It's winter and my eye is crying. I'm having allergies. Why? Who knows? What could I possibly be allergic to? Snow? The rain? What am I allergic to? There's no pollen. I don't even know my allergies. You guys want to hear a story? Last night, the wind was really, really bad and the trees were like knocking all over the place. Like I didn't know if they were gonna fall into my house. It was pretty scary. And so I had to hold my dog, because she was scared, obviously. She was like squirming and stuff, and sometimes I'm really allergic to my dog, and so like the wind was howling. It was like 25 miles per hour, and I was like, every time like the trees were going, it was like scary, and then my dog scared, and I started to get hives on my neck because sometimes, like I said, I'm allergic to her, and my eyes started swelling and getting really itchy, and I was like, this is hilarious. Like, I'm terrified. I'm trying to protect my dog. The wind is howling. Like, is the tree gonna fall on me? Am I gonna be like the Wizard of Oz girl? Am I gonna be like the witch from the Wizard of Oz? Like, what is happening?